At first glance, the world seems clean and calm. We see the sky, the trees, the cities, the people, the entire visible layer of life that seems to belong to us. But beneath that thin surface of everyday reality lies another world, older, more powerful, and infinitely more numerous. A world we cannot see, yet one that surrounds us completely. In the air, in the water, in the soil, on your hands, in your eyes, lungs, and heart. It is the world of bacteria, the beings that quite literally breathed life into the earth, and that still, every single day, keep its rhythm alive. In just 1 second, millions of bacteria move across your skin, communicating, dividing, exchanging genes. In a single teaspoon of soil, there are more bacteria than humans who have ever lived on this planet. And yet most of us think of them only as threats, germs, infections, diseases. It's like describing the ocean by talking only about its storms. Bacteria were the first inhabitants of Earth. They were here long before plants, animals, or even oxygen in the atmosphere. They transformed a dead, toxic planet into an environment capable of sustaining life like ours. Their colonies created the first ecosystems, the cradle from which all other forms of existence emerged. Without them, we simply wouldn't exist. Because in every cell of your body lives an echo of an ancient bacterium that billions of years ago formed a symbiosis with another organism, giving rise to complex life. Though microscopic, their influence is immense. You breathe because of them, you digest because of them, and your emotions, appetite, and immunity are all tied to them. Over 100 trillion bacteria live inside your gut, working together to keep you alive. Some produce neurotransmitters, others detect toxins, and still others build natural protective barriers. It's no coincidence that scientists often call them the second brain, because even without neurons, they can shape your thoughts and moods in subtle but real ways. But bacteria are not only guardians, they are also architects and destroyers. They can build, but they can also tear down. On one hand, they helped us create medicines that saved millions of lives. On the other, they have caused epidemics that changed the course of history. They have written many of humanity's defining chapters, from the Black Death to the dawn of modern medicine. Their world has no morality, only balance, adaptation, and survival. Everything that seems extreme to us is ordinary to them. You'll find them in Antarctic glaciers and volcanic springs, in radioactive caves, and even the vacuum of space. They survive temperatures, pressures, and radiation that would destroy any known animal. They need no light, no air, no comfort, only a spark of energy, a piece of rock, and a little time. What's truly fascinating is how quickly they learn. They evolve in hours, not in millions of years. They can share DNA like messages, copying and pasting fragments of genes as if editing lines of code. For us, that's the future of genetic engineering. For them, it's just another Tuesday. Look through a microscope, and those tiny moving specks in a drop of water might seem simple, primitive, but the truth is the opposite. We are the complex outcome of their simplicity. They created the chemical language spoken by all of nature. They built the foundations of life long before anything existed that could describe it. So this story isn't about germs. It's about a civilization older than humankind, about beings that silently rule the world and us. An invisible empire that stretches everywhere, even into places that seem utterly lifeless. Because bacteria aren't the background of life. They are life. Before the first leaf, the first animal, the first breath, there was only darkness and the sea. But not the sea we know. The water was hot, thick with minerals, veiled in volcanic smoke and gases that had nothing to do with air. The earth was still cooling. There was no oxygen, no ozone, not even the color of the sky. And yet, in this inferno, something appeared that would change everything. Life. Not in any familiar form. There were no leaves, no muscles, no eyes, just tiny particles, barely more complex than dust, yet capable of one thing no stone or ocean could do. They could copy themselves. The first bacteria were like sparks of matter becoming aware. They appeared divided, multiplied, merged, until from chaotic chemistry, order began to form. And in that moment, the once dead earth began to breathe. For billions of years, they were the only inhabitants of this planet. The world belonged entirely to them. They built microscopic kingdoms in the oceans and beneath the ground, filled caves and cracks in the rocks, formed colonies and membranes that became the first ecosystems. Their lives unfolded in a rhythm unknown to any other creature, silent, invisible, yet relentless. One of the greatest inventions in the history of life was something we now call photosynthesis. Certain primitive bacteria, cyanobacteria, learned to use sunlight to make energy. It may not sound revolutionary, but the consequences were cosmic. The byproduct of this process was oxygen, a gas that had once been poison on Earth, and that over time became the very air we breathe. That was a turning point. For many organisms of that time, oxygen was deadly, and most bacteria perished. But those that survived learned to use it. In exchange for energy, they began to create molecules that allowed life to evolve. And so, billions of years ago, the oxygen world was born, a world where movement, metabolism, thought, and everything we now call life became possible. One of these bacteria did something even more extraordinary. Instead of fighting to survive, it joined forces with another cell. Instead of consuming it, it entered it. Instead of dying, it began to cooperate. That quiet decision of nature gave rise to mitochondria, the microscopic power plants within our cells. Every cell in your body, every beat of your heart, every thought in your mind exists because one ancient bacterium chose to live in partnership instead of extinction. This event, known as endosymbiosis, was one of the most important moments in Earth's history. It was as if two separate civilizations merged into one and created an entirely new way of existing. Without that act of cooperation, there would be no plants, no animals, no humans. In a way, we are descendants of bacteria that learned how to collaborate. Everything on Earth that breathes, eats, thinks, or dreams carries within it a fragment of that ancient world. Mitochondria, those tiny organisms trapped inside our cells, still carry their own DNA, separate from ours. Each one is a living memory of life that existed billions of years ago. So when we speak of our body, we're really talking about a collaboration among thousands of species living as one. Contrary to popular belief, evolution wasn't built on endless conflict. It was built on cooperation. Bacteria exchanged genes, shared abilities, and built vast networks that transferred information faster than any human-made system. Their DNA isn't a straight line. It's an open library, free for all to read and copy. For us, genetics is a science. For them, it's a native language of survival. If you could see Earth billions of years ago, you wouldn't see forests or animals, only mud, ocean, and an endless web of life beneath the surface. And though it might look simple and empty, it was already a world of communication, metabolism, and information. A biological internet where every bacterium had its role. They laid the foundation for everything that came after. And even now, their laws still rule the world. Adaptation, cooperation, and exchange. Humanity may see itself as the ruler of the planet, but bacteria wrote the first law of nature, that life doesn't have to be perfect to endure. It only has to be able to change. When we think about ourselves, about the I, about our body, about who we are, we imagine a single organism, one being, one nervous system, one heart, one consciousness. But the truth is different. Each of us is a colony, a community, an ecosystem where billions of foreign creatures live, reproduce, and die every single day. Their name? Bacteria. On our skin, in our mouths, lungs, tongues, and intestines, microscopic life thrives everywhere. It's estimated that around 100 trillion bacteria live inside your body. That's more than the number of your own human cells. In fact, you could say a human being is half bacteria. And yet, for most of our history, we've seen them as the enemy. But the truth is, most of them don't harm us. They make us who we are. Without them, we couldn't digest, defend ourselves from infections, or even feel. Because bacteria aren't passive passengers inside us. They're active participants, collaborators, architects, sometimes even conductors of the biological symphony we call life. In your gut, in a world without light or air, at a temperature perfectly tuned to your body, bacteria form a complex ecosystem known as the microbiome. Every person carries a unique collection of microorganisms, like a biological fingerprint. No two are the same, and though we can't see them, they sense how you eat, how you sleep, whether you're stressed. And in return, they respond. Bacteria break down proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. They produce vitamins B and K. They synthesize compounds that strengthen your immune system. But that's not all. In recent decades, research has revealed something that once sounded like science fiction. Bacteria can influence our mood. Scientists discovered that certain gut bacteria produce neurotransmitters, the same chemicals that regulate emotions in the brain. Serotonin, dopamine, GABA. They're not just made by neurons. Your gut actually produces more of them than your brain does. Through the vagus nerve, they send signals directly to the centers of emotion, quietly shaping how you feel. When you're stressed, your microbiome senses it. When you eat poorly, it changes in response. And when it's balanced, you feel calm, clear, light. Some scientists now speak of the gut-brain axis, a communication system so intricate it's hard to tell who's really in charge. Maybe we're not the ones directing them. Maybe they're directing us. Maybe it's bacteria that decide when you crave sweets or salty snacks. Some species can release compounds that trigger hunger for specific foods they themselves need to survive. It's as if your body were a stage, and bacteria, the unseen scriptwriters. But it's not just the gut. The skin microbiome protects us from pathogens by outcompeting harmful bacteria. The microbes in our mouths keep the pH balanced and guard against cavities, until we disrupt their delicate order. Then comes retaliation, infections, inflammation, gum disease. There are even bacteria that save lives. When antibiotics destroy the gut ecosystem, a bacterial transplant, known as a microbiota transplant, can restore health to patients on the edge of death. It's not magic, it's biology. Reintroducing the right community restores balance. Each of us is an environment constantly tended by bacteria. When we eat, they work. When we sleep, they divide. When we fall in love, get stressed, or get sick, they react. They are our shadow, our support system, our invisible nervous network. Some researchers believe the microbiome may be linked to autism, depression, anxiety, even risk-taking behavior. Changing gut bacteria in mice has altered their behavior, from fearful to brave, from aggressive to calm. Could it be that the emotions we think of as ours are actually the work of trillions of beings living inside us? For centuries, humans have searched for the soul, in the heart, in the brain, in consciousness. But maybe part of who we are lives deeper, in the gut, in the mucous membranes, in bacterial communities that together create what we call self. Because if they were to disappear, we wouldn't survive more than a few days. What's fascinating is that we're not born with them. A newborn enters the world almost sterile. Only during birth, through contact with the mother, do bacteria begin to colonize the body. They build immunity, teaching the infant system to tell friend from foe. Babies born by cesarean section have a different set of microbes than those born naturally, and how they're fed, breast milk or formula, shapes their microbiome and immunity for life. It all sounds like science fiction, but it's only biology. Quiet, patient, brilliant biology. And though we can't see them with the naked eye, bacteria are our guardians. They ask for no recognition, need no gratitude. It's enough for them to endure, coexisting with us in the intricate dance of evolution. So when you think of yourself as a single being, remember you're not. You're a community. a living city made up of trillions of tiny inhabitants constantly working to maintain balance. And maybe that's the true secret of life, that survival is only possible together. Though invisible, bacteria have weight, literally. The average human body contains between 30 and 50 trillion bacterial cells. If you could gather them all and place them on a scale, the needle would stop at about 1, maybe 2 kilograms. Not much, perhaps, but that's roughly the weight of the human brain. In other words, each of us carries within a hidden, bacterial organ equal in mass to the very center of our consciousness. An organ we can't see or feel, yet one we can't live without. It isn't a parasite or an intruder. It's a part of us. On this planet, everything is born and everything dies. Continents drift, oceans evaporate, species appear and vanish like sparks. But there's one form of life that has never broken. The chain, one that's endured from the time Earth was a fiery sphere to now, when humans walk its surface. Bacteria. For them, the phrase "end of the world" doesn't exist. They've survived everything. Cosmic bombardments, supervolcano eruptions, ice ages, oxygen poisoning, even the time when the planet was frozen solid. We're not the masters of survival. They are. They don't need perfect conditions. What would kill us is enough for them. Some live deep within hydrothermal vents at the ocean floor, where temperatures exceed 120 degrees, and the pressure would crush a submarine. Others inhabit glaciers where time itself seems frozen and life sleeps for thousands of years. In deserts, in radioactive caves, in rocks miles below the surface. Where it seems nothing could live, they persist. One of their greatest secrets is the endospore, a microscopic capsule of survival. When conditions grow too harsh, a bacterium can seal itself inside one and wait, not for a day or a year, but for millennia. In 2000, scientists revived bacteria trapped in salt crystals for 250 million years. It was like bringing back to life an organism that remembered the ancestors of dinosaurs. Another, Deinococcus radiodurans, can survive radiation 1,000 times stronger than a lethal dose for humans. Place it inside a nuclear reactor, and it would just shrug if it had shoulders. Its DNA can literally reassemble itself, repairing damage as if following an internal blueprint every living thing on Earth would envy. Some bacteria can live without light, air, or oxygen. They draw energy from sulfur, methane, iron, even radiation. Volcanic bacteria on the ocean floor form vast colonies around hydrothermal vents, creating the foundation of ecosystems in places untouched by sunlight. These organisms may hold the key to understanding how life could arise and endure on other planets. Others can freeze for hundreds of thousands of years, only to awaken again as if time meant nothing to them. Scientists have found bacteria preserved in permafrost for 30,000 years that, once thawed, simply resumed life. It's a real-life version of Sleeping Beauty, only microbial and true. Their adaptability is nearly instant. They can exchange genes not only with offspring, but with completely unrelated species. When entering new environments, they borrow survival tricks at lightning speed. That's how antibiotic-resistant bacteria evolved, a result of their brilliant genetic communication. For them, evolution doesn't take millions of years. Sometimes it takes a single night. But what makes them truly remarkable isn't just resilience. It's cooperation under threat. When the environment turns hostile, bacteria build biofilms, biological cities. Millions of cells connect into one structure, protecting each other from toxins and temperature changes. Together, they can survive what would destroy any individual cell. In a sense, they created the first version of society, a microscopic world of solidarity that existed long before humanity. Now think about it. All those traits, regeneration, cooperation, resistance, adaptation, are the very things science dreams of replicating. In nanotechnology, in medicine, in space exploration, Bacteria have already built what we're still struggling to understand. Maybe the real question isn't how they're still alive, but whether we've learned to live the way they do, in harmony with every change, every disaster, every ending that for them is only a new beginning. Because if survival is the measure of perfection, bacteria define it. For billions of years, bacteria have quietly ruled the world. But only now, after thousands of years of human history, are we beginning to understand. They're not our enemies. They're our allies. Invisible engineers capable of repairing what humanity has broken. In a world suffocating under waste, plastic, and toxins, they've become a symbol of hope. There are bacteria that can literally eat plastic, breaking it down into harmless molecules. Some were discovered by accident, like Ideonella sakaiensis. In Japan, a bacterium that evolved to digest PET, one of the most common plastics. What is a problem for us became food for it. Across the globe, scientists are working to modify bacteria so they can turn waste into biofuel, energy, or even new materials. There are already bacteria that generate electricity. All they need is oxygen and a bit of glucose. In microbial batteries, they breathe metal, passing electrons directly to it and creating current. One day, this could power devices in places no power grid can reach. Some can even build. NASA is experimenting with bacterial species capable of producing minerals and concrete. The idea is simple. If humans ever reach Mars, they won't bring cement trucks, but they could bring a few vials of bacteria that would eat Martian dust and turn it into building material. Living factories of the future. Other bacteria are already helping clean water and soil from toxins. In India, where rivers were poisoned for decades by heavy metals, scientists use Pseudomonas bacteria to neutralize mercury and lead. Where humans saw pollution, bacteria saw an energy source. But the biggest revolutions are happening inside us. Biotechnologists can now program bacteria like living computers. They insert fragments of DNA that turn them into microscopic laboratories, able to detect diseases, produce medicine, or even deliver it directly to specific cells. In one experiment, scientists engineered bacteria that recognize cancer cells and release compounds that destroy tumors while sparing healthy tissue. This is medicine where the cure isn't a pill, but a living organism. In agriculture, bacteria are becoming alternatives to pesticides and fertilizers. They can fix nitrogen, protect roots from fungi, even teach plants to resist disease. They're no longer just soil additives. They're part of a new biological farming system, a kind of agriculture that doesn't exploit nature, but collaborates with it. And perhaps most humbling of all, bacteria remind us that life doesn't need complexity to be perfect. It needs only simplicity and cooperation. Their survival strategies, gene exchange, chemical communication, instant adaptation, are now inspiring programmers, engineers, even creators of artificial intelligence. Neural networks, machine learning systems, all in some way, imitate what bacteria have been doing for billions of years. Looking through a microscope, one starts to realize that the future doesn't belong to machines or steel. It belongs to biology, to organisms that can heal, communicate, and evolve on their own. Bacteria are not just the past of life. They are its future. Maybe what we've been calling the dawn of the technological era is, in truth, the beginning of a new age, one of cooperation with nature. Maybe humanity's mission isn't to conquer the world, but finally to listen to it. And if that's true, then the quiet whisper of bacteria, the one we never hear, may just be the most important voice of the future. Not all bacteria are friends, of course. Some have always carried within them the essence of chaos, destruction, and death. Pathogens, as we call them, have shaped human history for centuries. Their names inspire dread. Plague, cholera, typhus, tuberculosis. Millions of lives vanished within days, weeks, months, while humanity stood helpless against invisible killers. It wasn't brute force. It was genius survival strategy. Bacteria can be silent, patient, and utterly unpredictable. Let's take the plague of the 14th century. The Black Death swept through Europe, killing more than a third of its population. People watched death unfold before their eyes. but they couldn't understand its cause. Today, we know the catastrophe was caused by Yersinia pestis, a bacterium that perfectly exploited insects and densely populated cities to spread itself. Its success was no accident. Evolution had been refining its skill for infection over millennia, teaching it how to survive in conditions that should have been impossible for life. Cholera, another classic example, shows that bacteria don't need wars or weapons to wreak havoc. Water, in which Vibrio cholerae multiplies, becomes its instrument of death. In the 19th century, cholera epidemics wiped out thousands of people within weeks, and doctors simply didn't know how to stop it. Only the work of John Snow and the discovery that the bacterium spread through drinking water changed the course of history. Modern times don't mean the end of bacterial threats. Quite the opposite. Hospitals, laboratories, and clinics, places where humans fight diseases, have become training grounds for bacterial survival. Superbugs, resistant to multiple antibiotics, evolved precisely where medicine was meant to destroy them. MRSA, methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, learned to thrive in an environment flooded with drugs. CRE, carbapenem-resistant Enterobacteriaceae, now escapes almost every therapy known to science. Every new medicine becomes just another lesson in survival strategy. Bacteria don't simply react to threats, they plan for them. Because bacteria can talk. Quorum sensing is a chemical communication system that allows them to assess their numbers, synchronize their actions, and decide when to strike. It's as if an invisible army were silently watching the battlefield, waiting for the perfect moment to act. They don't attack randomly. They move like a well-coordinated organization, carefully planning how to maximize their chances of survival and expansion. The history of humanity's battle with bacteria is also the story of chance, of accidents that changed the world. Penicillin, the drug that saved millions of lives, was born by accident, when Alexander Fleming noticed that a mold of the Penicillium genus had destroyed bacteria on his petri dish. Nobody was looking for a miracle antibiotic. It was chance, observation, and patience that led to one of the greatest discoveries in medicine. Yet even that miracle wasn't the end. Bacteria quickly learned to adapt, turning every new drug into another evolutionary challenge. Pathogens keep us vigilant. They remind us that life itself is a never-ending struggle for balance. Each epidemic, each new wave of antibiotic resistance, each global outbreak shows that our dominance over the microscopic world is far from absolute. What to us feels like a catastrophe is, to them, simply another stage of evolution, a lesson, a training session in endurance, an experiment in the art of survival. The dark side of bacteria isn't evil in the human sense. It's pure adaptation, precise, relentless, and effective. A reminder that life at its core is brutally efficient, patient, and unstoppable. And in the invisible kingdoms of the microscopic, humanity will never truly rule. We are, and will always remain, mere guests in a world that learned how to survive everything. At first glance, bacteria seem like insignificant, microscopic beings, living out their quiet existence in a world too small for our eyes. Yet their activity spans the entire planet and determines whether Earth remains a cradle of life or turns into a burning sphere of greenhouse gases. When we look at the sky, we see clouds, sunlight, oceans, and forests. Bacteria see chemical processes, the invisible machinery that drives the atmosphere. Every breath they take, every molecule they break down, every drop of mucus they produce in a microscopic habitat has consequences that echo across the planet's climate. In the oceans, bacteria are the true architects of life and death. Microorganisms within plankton not only sustain the marine food chains, they also regulate the global carbon cycle. They transform carbon dioxide into organic compounds that eventually sink to the ocean floor, a process known as the biological carbon pump. It acts like a planetary climate regulator. By locking CO2 away in the deep sea, bacteria slow global warming. And when those same microbes die or metabolize differently, CO2 is released back into the atmosphere, amplifying heat. Every microgram of plankton can, in theory, shift the fate of the planet. No less extraordinary are the bacteria in soil. Beneath the thick layer of earth, in the moist, dark humus. Billions of microorganisms decompose the remains of plants and animals. In the process, they release gases, methane, nitrous oxide, carbon dioxide. Deforestation, over-fertilization, and changes in soil humidity all alter their metabolism. A single hectare of soil can produce tons of greenhouse gases each year, all because of microbes responding to environmental change. They are the invisible regulators of climate, and when we fail to understand or respect them, it's we who pay the price. Some bacteria even act as methane burners. In wetlands, tundras, and swamp sediments, microbes oxidize methane before it reaches the atmosphere. Without them, methane, a gas 25 times more potent than CO2, would accumulate much faster, accelerating global warming. It's an invisible, tireless service, one that we almost never notice, but that keeps the planet in delicate balance. But bacteria can also work against us. In the thawing Arctic, as permafrost melts, microbes that have been locked away for millions of years awaken and begin breaking down organic matter, releasing huge amounts of CO2 and methane. Climate change, then, isn't just a result of human emissions. Microorganisms themselves become a new source of greenhouse gases, creating feedback loops that we can barely predict or control. Some oceanic bacteria produce dimethyl sulfide, a gas that helps seed clouds and influences how sunlight is reflected back into space. In other words, bacteria not only decide how much heat the planet retains, but even shape the way our sky looks and how much light reaches the ground. Despite their immense influence, bacteria remain the most underestimated engineers of the biosphere. We think about climate in terms of machines, factories, cars, and forests, forgetting that billions of unseen microbes, tirelessly recycling carbon, nitrogen, and sulfur, are the true planetary caretakers. Every shift in their environment, from ocean warming to soil pollution, changes their chemistry and, with it, the climate itself, often in ways we still struggle to understand. In this sense, bacteria are both heroes and quiet instigators of climate change. Their actions aren't conscious, but their impact is global. They teach us humility, reminding us that life isn't our exclusive domain. Every pulse of the biosphere, every rhythm of nature, depends on the interplay between the visible and the unseen. So next time you look at the ocean, the forest, or a field, remember, where you see nothing, billions of bacteria are at work. They don't rest, they don't protest, they don't ask permission. Every moment of their activity shapes the climate, fuels biological cycles, and decides the future of life on Earth. In their tiny bodies lies more responsibility for this planet than in the whole of human civilization. Now imagine that your mood, your emotions, even the way you perceive reality, could be partly steered by billions of invisible beings living inside you. It sounds like science fiction, but science is beginning to confirm it. The gut microbiome doesn't just digest food. It produces chemicals that influence the brain itself. Some bacteria synthesize neurotransmitters: serotonin, dopamine, gamma-aminobutyric acid, the very same chemicals that regulate mood, energy, stress, and pleasure. What once seemed impossible is now a serious field of study. Bacteria can modulate our emotions and shape cognition. Experiments on mice revealed something astonishing. When scientists transplanted gut microbes from bold, curious mice into timid ones, the shy animals suddenly became braver, more exploratory. Similar studies show that the composition of gut bacteria can affect anxiety and depression, altering how an organism responds to stress and emotional stimuli. Some microbes go even further. There is growing evidence that bacteria produce metabolites with psychoactive effects, compounds that interact with brain receptors and subtly alter how we perceive reality. It doesn't mean bacteria control the mind, but it does mean there's a quiet chemical dialogue between gut and brain that shapes our consciousness in ways we're only beginning to grasp. Studies with probiotics show that giving specific bacterial strains can reduce anxiety and depression. A new branch of medicine is emerging, psychobiotics, where the cure is not a pill, but a living organism. It's as if science were finally realizing that mood. Perception, even creativity aren't confined to the brain, but co-created by the ecosystem within us. Some bacteria that colonize us in early childhood may shape not only our emotions, but our social behavior and response to reward. They produce chemical messengers that act on the limbic system, the brain's emotional center, influencing fear, motivation, and pleasure. Some researchers even suggest that variations in the microbiome could explain subtle differences in temperament, stress resilience, and perception among people. Even more fascinating, certain gut microbes can interact with compounds in food that have psychoactive properties. Substances in cocoa, coffee, or fermented products may be metabolized by bacteria in ways that amplify their effects on the brain. It's an invisible chemistry that links diet, microbes, and consciousness in a delicate biochemical symphony. In short, bacteria aren't just helpers of digestion. They are co-authors of our perception. Every thought, every flicker of emotion might be modulated by the silent colonies living within us, quietly, invisibly, yet with the power to alter mood, behavior, and perhaps even the way we experience reality itself. When we think of bacteria, the first things that come to mind are disease, dirt, and danger. And yet most of our daily lives would be impossible without their invisible labor. Bacteria are everywhere. In the food we eat, the cosmetics we apply to our skin, even in the materials we wear or use. They are the silent partners of our everyday existence, often unnoticed, yet absolutely essential. Take food, for example. Fermentation, a process as old as human civilization itself, is in fact the work of bacteria. Every wheel of cheese aging in a cellar, every bottle of kefir or jar of kimchi, hides thousands of microorganisms transforming simple ingredients into something far more valuable. Milk becomes yogurt rich in probiotics, cabbage turns into vitamin-packed kimchi, and grains become fragrant, flavorful bread thanks to lactic acid bacteria. What humanity once saw as a magical process is actually the result of intelligent bacterial chemistry. But bacteria don't stop in the kitchen. In modern cosmetics, they act as invisible guardians of the skin. Probiotics in creams and serums support the skin's natural barrier, strengthen its microbiome, reduce inflammation, and protect it from harmful microbes. It's a subtle, everyday partnership, bacteria working to defend us, even when we're unaware of it. Their role in biodegradation is equally fascinating. In laboratories and research centers, bacteria are used to break down waste, including plastics. Some species can metabolize synthetic polymers that are nearly indestructible for humans, turning them into water and carbon dioxide. Imagine millions of microorganisms in a compost bin performing precise, silent work we never see, yet saving the planet from tons of waste. Bacteria are also stepping into the world of materials. Scientists are designing bio-based paints, building materials, and even fabrics whose structure and properties come from living microorganisms. Some bacteria produce cellulose, a natural compound that can be used to create lightweight, strong, and biodegradable materials. There are even experiments with living concrete, in which microbes form minerals that harden structures, potentially building walls, bridges, or even habitats on other planets in the future. We can't forget about molecular gastronomy and experimental fermentation. Chefs and scientists are working together to discover how bacteria influence the flavor, aroma, and texture of food. Each meal becomes an experience shaped by invisible microbial artists. Kombucha, miso, fermented sauces, even chocolate. In all these products, bacteria leave their signature, unseen yet perceptible in taste and scent. Bacteria in everyday life also teach us patience and cooperation. You can't rush them. You can't speed up fermentation or the biodegradation process. You have to wait, observe, and nurture the environment they live in. It's a lesson that can't be learned any other way. Collaboration with the invisible world requires humility, patience, and understanding. Human daily life is full of invisible processes. When you eat yogurt, wear a garment made from bacterial cellulose, or look at a plant nourished by bioactive bacteria. They are there, quiet, precise, tireless. They don't shout about their presence. They don't demand attention. And yet they shape our lives, our health, our tastes, and the materials that surround us. Now imagine that some secrets of longevity are not hidden in our genes or diet, but in the billions of invisible organisms living in our gut. The microbes that have been with us since birth might determine how fast we age, how our immune system responds, and how well our tissues regenerate. Research shows that the microbiome changes with age. In youth, it is diverse and rich in various strains that cooperate with the body. They aid digestion, regulate metabolism, produce vitamins and neurotransmitters. As we age, the number of species decreases, balance is lost, and the immune system weakens. This seemingly small shift can lead to inflammation, chronic diseases, and ultimately accelerate aging. Some bacteria have remarkable regenerative power. Studies on mice have shown that transferring the microbiome from young animals to older ones improves immune function, increases muscle endurance, and slows tissue degeneration. It's as if young microbes were sending invisible signals of renewal throughout the body, teaching cells how to repair themselves more effectively. The microbiome also influences inflammation, one of the key factors in aging. Chronic low-level inflammation wears out cells, damages tissues, and increases the risk of disease. Some bacteria produce substances that suppress inflammation, acting as internal antioxidants and immune regulators. Others, when their numbers grow too high, can worsen degeneration, showing how thin the line between ally and enemy can be. But immunity and regeneration aren't the only things at stake. The microbiome affects cellular metabolism and hormone production. Certain bacteria produce short-chain fatty acids that stimulate cells in the gut, liver, and even brain to use energy more efficiently. Others participate in the metabolism of vitamin B and folic acid, crucial for cell division and DNA repair. All of this influences how fast the body ages. Interestingly, studies of longevity communities, people who live past 100, show that their microbiomes maintain extraordinary diversity and stability. Even in old age, their guts are home to strains that usually disappear long before. This suggests that longevity depends not only on genes, but also on preserving a healthy microbiome. Experiments with probiotics and prebiotic-rich diets show that we can actively shape our microbiome to slow aging. Fermented foods, fiber, and plant polyphenols all encourage the growth of beneficial bacteria. It's an invisible strategy against time, bringing real effects in health, vitality, and immunity. When you look at it this way, bacteria stop being just inhabitants of our intestines. They become invisible guardians of health, regulators of life's pace and youthfulness. Every molecule they produce, every chemical reaction inside us, affects how long we stay strong, how we respond to disease, and how fast our cells wear out. In a sense, our life is a partnership with them. By caring for our microbiome, we strengthen our immune system, restore metabolic balance, and slow down the relentless passage of time. It's as if millions of invisible biological allies were helping us fight against our own biology, teaching us that aging is not a sentence, but a process we can shape, as long as we understand the microbial world within us. And that's where the true wonder lies. Bacteria are both practical and mysterious. They can be doctors, artists, engineers, and teachers all at once. Every day we interact with them without realizing that the world works as it does because of them. They are co-authors of our reality, the silent masters of everyday life whose role in our existence is as immense as it is invisible.